I've had full panic attacks in workplace meetings, racing heart, shaky voice, sweating palms, sitting in a conference room trying to look calm while my nervous system is freaking out. And every time I told myself the same thing always, I just need to push harder, prepare more, grind more, outwork that anxiety. That's the lie I kept telling myself, and I believed it for years because I genuinely, truly believe in hard work, and I still do. Hard work is how I built my career. It's how you've probably built your career. Hard work and discipline is super important. It's how I've gotten through the hardest seasons of my life. Hard work and discipline are super important. There's no doubt about it. Without it, hard work and discipline, you can't do anything. But hard work and discipline has its limits. After I've done the hard work and prepared my best for anything, pushing harder actually is counterintuitive for me, and it's seemed to backfire. In my case, when I push really hard, it seems to show up as anxiety and sometimes even mini panic attacks, usually at the worst possible time when I'm actually trying to do the thing I work so hard to be able to do. Now, in another video, I'll talk about how there's a correlation between self-compassion and performance anxiety. But in this video, I want to point out something different. It was a starting point that actually led to further discoveries for myself about how I could get rid of performance anxiety or at least mitigate it. And it smashed how I see and now understand the problem around pushing harder. And a quote from Kobe Bryant, of all people, the hardest working athlete of this generation, is what broke this lie open for me. If you think about a period in your life when everything was just flowing, the right people showed up, the right opportunities seemed to appear, and results they came, or at least they felt very natural. Now, if you think about a time or maybe a season in your life when everything felt like you were pushing or trudging through mud, it was the same you, the same skills, the same effort, but completely different results. One outcome had this ease and flow about it, and the other one, it just seemed like a lot of effort without your best outcomes. You tried your best in both situations. And so you got to think about it. What changed, or what was the difference between the two? And here's what I noticed when I got honest about my muddy periods in life, where everything felt like I was fighting for, my results. And in the flow periods, my inner state, it was settled, it was clear. I always felt present in the action that I was performing and not thinking about performing. If I flipped that in the mud period, something inside had gone scattered, it had gotten noisy, contracted, which means it's never been a strategy problem, it's never been a skills problem, and most importantly, it's never been an effort problem. The effort for me has always been there the whole time. The hard work has never been an issue for me, and I say that humbly, honestly, and truthfully, straight up. It was a level of awareness problem, and that brings me to Kobe. In his documentary film, The Muse, definitely check it out if you haven't seen it, it's awesome. He described his first game back after his Achilles injury. He'd gone through all the hard work possible you could, to get his mind right to that elite level of operation. The documentary showed how he'd done all the incredibly grueling work, the rehab to get his body back to his elite status after that Achilles heel injury. And what he said has stayed with me ever since I heard it. He said, right before games, he always had this same connection, this same inner feeling. He said, I feel like the energy in the building, the sounds of the camera, the smell of popcorn, the sounds of people walking around me, preparing for the game. I could feel the intensity in the air. There's an energy that you can tap into. Once you feel it, everything becomes you, and you become everything. Now, if you sit with that for a moment and think about it, because Kobe was one of the most disciplined, hardest working athletes who ever lived, or at least in my opinion. He had that, what we call the Mamba mentality. He even had a mindset named after him, the Mamba mentality. He had these 4 a.m. workouts, the obsessive preparation. Nobody knew him, ever doubted him or his work ethic for a second, not for a second. And yet here he is describing something that goes beyond that extreme work ethic, beyond the preparation, beyond the discipline, and even beyond the talent. An energy, something he could tap into. So the hardest working man in basketball pointed past hard work. And so what was he actually pointing at? Well, here's something most people don't know about Star Wars, actually. I'm going to pull in Star Wars, the famous trilogy written by George Lucas, who is the creator of one of the most culturally significant films in franchise history, at least in human history in terms of movie franchises. George Lucas, he practiced transcendental meditation. He drew heavily upon Vedic philosophy when he created the concept of the Force. And he once said, the Force is what all basis of religions are based on. This is what George Lucas said, especially in terms of religious religions, which essentially that there is a force, a God, whatever you want to call it. And if you notice how the Jedis, they actually operate within the movie, they don't out-prepare their opponents necessarily. They don't, outthink them. They access a deeper level of intelligence, so they tap into a deeper level of intelligence that runs beneath and it runs through the surface of all things. And when you and I were aligned with that level, and when the Jedis are aligned with that level, their actions carry a quality of natural power that effort alone could never produce. Hard work alone could never produce. Now, obviously, Star Wars is fiction, but the philosophy behind it, it's not fiction at all. So George Lucas, he was drawing upon something real, something ancient, something the Vedic tradition has been pointing at for thousands of years, something that Kobe Bryant, who never mentioned Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, as far as I know, was somehow describing from a basketball court in Los Angeles. The same thing using a different language. Now, the Vedic tradition has a name for it. Maharishi Mahesh Yogi called it dynamism. And here's how Maharishi would describe it. When you access the deepest level of your own awareness, the source of thought itself, your actions, they actually begin to arise from a place of natural intelligence. And the word really is natural intelligence rather than effortless calculation. So not hustle replacing effort, not talent replacing preparation, rather a deeper dimension of power available underneath all of that. And so when you stop trying to create results from just the surface level of the mind and instead allow actions to arise from a much deeper alignment, what emerges and what bubbles up to the action, to the surface level, is what Maharishi Mahesh Yogi would call spontaneous right action. And that is the right action at the right time with the right quality of power, not forced, but arising naturally. And so the way Kobe Bryant described becoming, everything becoming him and him becoming everything, that's not a metaphor. That's a description of what happens when human beings stop acting from the surface and start acting from the source. So if you haven't guessed yet, I'm not a Jedi and I'm not Kobe Bryant. I'm an unenlightened person with a super active ego and a very busy mind. I believe in hard work. There's no doubt about it. I believe in preparation. I believe in the Mamba mentality wholeheartedly. I have a huge respect for Kobe Bryant. This isn't a video about replacing effort with some cosmic shortcut. Nothing like that. What I am suggesting is different, that there is a dimension of power available underneath the effort that can supplement the effort. That the same preparation and discipline operating from a deeper level of alignment. And when you do that, it produces something qualitatively different than the same preparation and discipline operating from a scattered surface mind. So not either or, but both. That deep preparation, that Mamba mentality, but tapping into something deeper, effort and depth. Preparation and alignment, the Mamba mentality and using the force from Star Wars. And so that's what I think the greats, the GOATs, the greatest of all times have always tapped into. So here's where this stopped being philosophy for me and became practice, or is where I became a practitioner. So 2 experiments from my own life, not proof of anything, but experiments that are worth considering. And so the first one is the panic attacks that I opened up with in this video. What I discovered almost by accident is a simple 10 to 15 minutes of a breathing practice before those situations, before those meetings, combined with a cup of kava tea. They seem to produce a shift that is incredibly disproportionate to how simple the input of breath work in that cup of tea. So when I take the time to connect with my breath and connect with that cup of tea, I walk into those meetings feeling grounded, feeling present, and feeling clear. And I often walk out with this natural high, having spoken with confidence that felt impossible to get to, or to at least to access in an hour before that meeting. And so no matter how rehearsed or practiced I was for any topic at hand, I do this before every camera session, including what I'm doing right now, always without exception, because I've noticed that without it, I get stuck in my head. The nervousness in my voice shows up. I think too much about what I'm actually doing rather than actually falling into the flow of what I'm actually doing in the present moment. And what happens is that the coherence collapses. And with that, so does the quality of everything I'm trying to create in whatever task I'm trying to do at the time. So I think a small shift in the level I'm operating, it produces a disproportionate large shift in what I'm able to do naturally. And so pushing harder, it never did that. Going deeper and connecting with my breath, it seems to do that. Now, I'm not playing elite basketball or fighting the galaxy to save our galaxy. I'm just an ordinary dude in an ordinary meeting. This is how I earn my living. It's important to me that I perform at my best in those meetings and that I don't have panic attacks like I've had in the past. Now, I'll shoot out another story or another experiment, that gives me more data points to support this hypothesis. And so I think it was back in 2017, I was super stressed out. Again, it was with work, and I started practicing mindfulness-based stress reduction regularly. And after a few months of practicing every day consistently, my inner state, it started to become more settled, more in tune with the present moment than it had in many years. And one day I was getting out of the metro in Washington, D.C., and I overheard this gentleman talking about how powerful transcendental meditation had been in their life. Something about that conversation caught my attention. And when I heard that, I went home that evening and I Googled transcendental meditation, and I found out that there was one going on in DC that night. So I went and I signed up and I took the training. And a week later, on the final day of training, my teacher mentioned a master's degree in consciousness and human potential at this school called Maharishi's International University. Again, I went home that night, I read the description, and I knew immediately that was what I was supposed to do and what I was supposed to study. And at the same time, I was looking out there for what I was supposed to be studying. I was really interested in consciousness. And what I'm saying is, I'm not telling you that the universe arranged that for me. I'm not claiming it proves anything in particular. But what I will say is that my inner state during that period when these things came naturally into my life was the most settled it had been in a long time. And things just seemed to appear at the right moment and at the right time. Not because I was forcing anything, but because something about the quality of my awareness made me more receptive perhaps to what was already there. Was it dynamism like Maharishi talks about? Was it coherence in terms of physics or just good timing? I genuinely don't know. But I definitely find it interesting enough to keep experimenting to honestly find out and get those data points and figure it out for myself. So here's the physics of why I think this might actually work. I love physics, and I'm sharing this as something worth exploring not necessarily as settled matter of fact as saying this is exactly the cause and effect. But in physics, it says that when a system becomes coherent, it doesn't just become a little bit more powerful, it becomes exponentially more powerful. So think about light. I've given this analogy before. White light is all the different frequencies scattered in every direction, bright but not focused. If you take that same white light, align all those frequencies, make them coherent, what you get is a laser. A laser that can cut through things like steel, a laser that can be used in surgery to perform a surgery. Not because you added more light, but because you organized what was already there. Now, the Vedic tradition suggests that human consciousness works exactly in the same way, saying that a mind settled at its source acts with a quality of coherence that a scattered, surface level thinking mind simply cannot access. That's what dynamism points at. Power arising from alignment. So here's where I've landed personally. The most powerful move available to you and me, it's not always working harder. Of course, working hard is a big part of success, no doubt about it. But it's also, I think, about going deeper, tending to the root, the source of it all, and letting your actions arise from that place, a more settled place. Now, Kobe Bryant, what did he call it? He called it energy. George Lucas in Star Wars, he called it the Force. And Maharishi Mahesh Yogi called it dynamism. A basketball court in Los Angeles, a galaxy far, far away, an ancient tradition, thousands of years old. These are three different worlds, but at the same time, they're talking about one territory, the same silent field of power underneath everything you and I do. It's been there the whole time, and it's there right now as I'm speaking. So I think that the moment we learn to act from it, everything, as Kobe says, becomes you, and you and I, we become everything.